Hi everyone and welcome back to another Speak Out. Now today I want to talk about a really interesting topic. We're getting towards the end of the NFL season. It's that exciting time of year. The playoffs are right on the horizon and there's a lot of teams fighting for those last few spots. Nothing's confirmed yet. Only the Steelers and the Eagles are at the moment confirmed in the playoffs. However, there's other teams likely to follow. So some of the playoff scenarios to look out for this weekend will be the following. Obviously, Philadelphia have clinched the NFC East, but they will also get home field advantage throughout the playoffs if they win and the Vikings lose. And they'll clinch a first round bye if they win and they need the Rams to lose or tie and New Orleans and Carolina to do the same. However, the Vikings, to clinch their division, need a win or a tie, and Detroit to lose or tie, or Green Bay in the same situation to lose or tie. Again, they'll clinch a playoff berth simply with Seattle losing, Atlanta losing, and New Orleans losing, or Carolina instead of New Orleans. It can be one of the two. Again, the Rams will clinch their playoff berth with a win, a Green Bay loss, a New Orleans loss, an Atlanta loss, and a Detroit loss. So there's a few playoff scenarios heading there that we can see all coming together. But something a bit more exciting I wanted to talk about today is obviously Green Bay have spread the news. They've got good news that Aaron Rodgers will be back. He's been cleared to play, and they have a really interesting matchup with the 9-4 Panthers, who have really played well. In fact, they really did a good job against a really strong Vikings team last week. So I think matching up now with the Packers, what's interesting here is the Packers were just starting to get momentum, in my opinion, under Brett Hundley. Now, they struggled obviously at first with the quarterback change, but they've won a couple games, and now Aaron Rodgers will take back over with a team where momentum has shifted. They were finding a way to win without him. So if he can play at the level we all expect and know that he can, they could very much be right in the fight for that wild card spot. Now let me know how you think he'll do. Predict his stat line below. Do you think he'll be rusty coming back? Personally, I've seen too much Aaron Rodgers to know that, in my opinion, he's not going to drop off. Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. He plays at a certain standard every year. He is spectacular, and he'll take over a team at 7-6. They will probably need to win out to get that wild card spot, but they could very likely finish 10-6. I think the very telling matchup is with Carolina, because that's going to be really tough now to see, where do they match up. The Carolina Panthers, as I mentioned before, are a 9-4 team with the potential of probably finishing with a similar record. They may get a few more wins, but we're just going to see how they match up with a big team. And really, if they lose there, that's really going to hurt their playoff hopes. Obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the Vikings have likely sealed a playoff spot. If they don't this week, probably next week, and that will mean they have clinched the division. And the other team from that division in the hunt for that wild card spot are also 7-6, the Lions. So what the Packers really need is not just to carry on the win streak, but also for that key Lions loss to pop up. Now, if it doesn't pop up this week, or even in the following weeks, what is interesting is the Week 17 divisional matchup is none other than Packers-Lions. So if both teams win all their games to that point, the 2 games remaining in between now and that game, that could be a very interesting, hyped and intense division rivalry game that will be really good fun to watch, because obviously it'll have all the heat of a divisional game, but on top of it, both teams could potentially be vying for that last wild card spot. Now, what are their chances of actually making that wild card spot, perhaps compared to other teams? Well, if we look at the other teams in the hunt as well, you've got the Seahawks at 8-5, and I see them winning a few more games and going on to clinch one of those spots. You've got the Cowboys, who are also 7-6, and the Cardinals, who are 6-7. Obviously, the Cowboys being in a division that is already been clinched by the Eagles, so their only hope is that wild card spot. And the Cardinals, again, it's looking like the Rams will seal the division. However, they do have a very interesting matchup with the Seahawks. Now, the Seahawks, as I mentioned, looking for that other wild card spot, so I think it's unlikely that the Cardinals take it. But what's so interesting about this matchup is the division hasn't been sealed yet. So even though the Rams are on the verge of doing it, if Russell Wilson, who has been amazing this year, all things considered, he really has been at MVP kind of level, especially when you consider that he's not had the best blocking. It's been fantastic watching him make plays. If he can pull out another miraculous win along with the team against the Rams this weekend, the division in the NFC West will be hotly contested as always and coming right down to the wire, which should make for another interesting final sledge of games. We've got some really interesting matchups as well. Again, we have the Chargers and the Chiefs coming up. Now, the Chiefs currently lead their division, finally getting back on a win streak against the Raiders, and hopefully they want to keep that going. I said a win streak, it was one win, but they're looking to get that win streak going. On the other hand, the Chargers are on a bit of a win streak and looking to have come from behind, overtake them if you like, to take the top spot in that division. Now, it is possible that the second place team in that division gets the wild card spot, and it's actually very likely, because when you look at the other teams, the Chiefs 7-6, you've got the Ravens at 7-6, with the Steelers already having clinched the division, and you've got the Chargers also at 7-6. But then you've got the Dolphins and the Raiders at 6-7, and the Dolphins I can see being a potential threat, depending on what form they have, because on their day, as they showed against the Patriots, they can match up with the best of them. They've just not got to make little mistakes. The Raiders, you've then got the Jets and Bengals also at 5-7 and 5-8 respectively. I don't see as big a threats for the spot. So it is likely that the Ravens will end up with a wild card spot, but also perhaps the Chiefs and the Chargers. Whoever wins the division will obviously get that first week bye potentially, but depending on how many games they win again. But I think it's likely that one of them will end up in that wild card spot. Those are the teams that are in the hunt for the wild card spot. Obviously, you again have, at the moment, as it stands, you would have the Titans versus the Chiefs right now. The Titans being 8-5, the Bills and the Jaguars again 7-6 and 9-4 respectively. So they're not out of the hunt. Again, they would have to lose a lot of games to be behind those teams. But like I say, when I mentioned the other teams in the hunt, they seemed a bit further back. So it is likely that they could be pushing for that spot. And even when you look at the teams that will currently be in the wild card round, if the playoffs were to start today, the Jaguars, the Bills, the Titans, they all have similar records to both the Chiefs and the Chargers. So I don't see it being entirely inconceivable that one of them ends up in the wild card round, even if they don't win the division. What makes it interesting is now this matchup with the Ravens, because the Ravens, again, also 7-6, have played some good football the last few weeks. A quick shout out to Alex Collins, because I think he's been amazing all year, running really hard, fighting for yards, and they could sneak in that wild card spot as well. So we've got a few teams in a similar record in the AFC. Like I said, the Chiefs, you've got the Bills, the Ravens and the Chargers all at 7-6, all having up and down years. They've had highs and lows. So it's who can get those final last few wins before the end of the season comes. Now, looking at the NFC wildcard, as it stands right now, you've got the Falcons at 8-5, the Rams at 9-4, the Saints at 9-4, and the Panthers at 9-4. So you've got an interesting mix there. Now, I talked about the teams in the hunt for the spot a bit earlier. I said the Seahawks, you've got at 8-5. So they're really right on the verge. That this game against the Rams could be a real telling and interesting game. But it's likely, again, that, and highly possible, that both the teams from the NFC West end up in a wildcard spot. Now, this just goes to show, however, how interesting this Packers-Lions matchup is, because they will both need to be winning heading up to that game, because at 7-6, they really do need to win out if they're going to make that playoff spot. So it should be an interesting, as always, run to the playoffs. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you guys are looking forward to it. I can't wait now. We're almost there. As always, thank you for listening. And let me know which teams you think are going to push for that final spot in the playoffs.